The prison corridor was silent. Too silent. The kind of silence that made every footstep echo like thunder. Then came the scream. A shrill, blood-curdling cry ripped through the cell block, shaking guards and prisoners alike. It was the kind of sound that made your stomach turn, the kind that told you something terrible had just happened. When the guards rushed towards cell 27, they saw a scene that would stay with them forever. Inside, a woman with cold, piercing eyes stood over another inmate. The victim was on the ground, gasping for air, blood staining the concrete floor beneath her. The attacker's hands were shaking, but her face was disturbingly calm, like she'd done this before. It was Aileen Wuornos, the woman the media had called America's first female serial killer. Even locked away, she remained as dangerous as ever. Guards pinned her to the wall, struggling against her strength. Other prisoners screamed and banged on their doors, some in fear, others in excitement. Wuornos's voice cut through the chaos. She didn't beg, she didn't cry. Instead, she whispered one chilling sentence. "You'll never understand why I did it." And just like that, the scene froze in time. A violent act that wasn't supposed to happen inside one of the most secure prisons in the country. But how did she get here? What path had led this woman from the highways of Florida to this locked cell where death followed her even behind bars? To answer that, we need to rewind. Long before the prison screams, before the courtroom cameras, before she became a name that haunted America, Aileen was just a young girl lost in a world that seemed designed to break her. Born in Michigan, abandoned by her parents, and raised in a storm of neglect, she never had the kind of childhood where hope could grow. Instead, violence and betrayal shaped her like clay, twisting her view of the world. By the time she was a teenager, Aileen was living on the streets. Her face was hard, her eyes guarded, and her survival instincts sharper than most adults. She traded her safety for a roof, her dignity for food, her youth for survival. Each night on the cold pavement only added to the rage building inside her. As she drifted from town to town, Aileen learned how to read people quickly. She could spot a weakness in seconds, and she used it to get what she needed. But with each deal, each betrayal, each act of desperation, her anger grew. By the time she arrived in Florida, she wasn't just a drifter. She was a storm waiting to explode. Florida's highways became her hunting ground. To strangers, she looked like another woman hitchhiking, someone who needed a ride. But to Aileen, each car that pulled over was a test, a moment to decide if this driver would be her next victim. Between 1989 and 1990, 7 men picked her up, and 7 men never made it home again. The killings shocked the nation, not just because of the violence, but because they were done by a woman. America wasn't used to seeing women as predators in this way. Female killers were supposed to be rare, but Aileen shattered that belief. Her story forced people to ask hard questions about gender, violence, and what drives a person to cross the line from victim to killer. When she was finally caught in 1991, it was almost cinematic. Police used an undercover sting operation at a biker bar, coaxing her into a conversation until she slipped up. Handcuffs clicked, and for the first time in years, Aileen wasn't in control. In the courtroom, her face appeared on every news broadcast. Cameras zoomed in on her eyes, searching for guilt or remorse. But what the world saw was a woman who seemed detached from humanity. Some days she cried, other days she laughed. She admitted to the killings, calling them self-defense, claiming the men tried to harm her. But the jury didn't buy it. She was sentenced to death. Even after her conviction, Aileen fascinated the public. Was she a monster shaped by her crimes, or a broken child shaped by a cruel world? Documentaries, interviews, and books all tried to answer that question. But inside prison walls, the reality was much simpler. She was dangerous. And that brings us back to cell 27. On that day, Aileen had been quiet all morning. Guards later admitted they felt uneasy, like she was waiting for something. When the attack came, it was fast, brutal, and terrifying. Another inmate, a woman already hardened by years of violence, never expected that Wuornos would strike inside a place where every move was watched. But that was the thing about Aileen. Rules, bars, and chains didn't change who she was. The guards finally dragged her out of the cell, her voice echoing through the block. "You'll never understand why I did it." What did she mean? Was it a confession, a warning, or something darker? A clue that her story wasn't over? As the corridor doors slammed shut and her shadow disappeared into the darkness, the prison was left shaken. Inmates whispered through the bars, guards tightened their patrols, and somewhere deep inside, everyone wondered the same chilling question. If she could do this here, what else was Aileen Wuornos capable of? The heavy steel door slammed shut behind Aileen Wuornos, the echo rolling through the prison like a thunderclap. Guards wrestled her down the corridor, their boots pounding against the floor. Even with her arms pinned and her body shackled, she twisted and pulled with the strength of someone who had lived her entire life in fight mode. "You'll never understand why I did it," she repeated, louder this time. Her voice bounced off the concrete walls. The other women pressed their faces to the bars, some wide-eyed with fear, others smirking as if entertained by the chaos. For the staff, it was a nightmare. Aileen wasn't just another inmate anymore. She was a storm inside the prison, unpredictable and violent. If she could lash out so brutally here, inside a controlled environment, then what hope did they have of keeping her calm? The injured prisoner was rushed to the infirmary, her blood leaving a faint trail on the floor. The block buzzed with whispers. Rumors spread faster than the guards could contain them. Some said Aileen had tried to kill again. Others claimed she'd whispered something even more chilling to her victim before striking. No one knew the truth, but everyone knew one thing. This prison was no longer safe with Aileen inside. As investigators scrambled to piece together what had happened, Aileen sat in solitary confinement, her face blank and unreadable. A single light bulb flickered above her head, casting shadows that made her look almost inhuman. She didn't cry. She didn't beg. Instead, she stared at the wall, lost in thought, like she was reliving every decision that had led her here. The quiet of solitary was suffocating, but for Aileen, it seemed natural. She had always lived on the edge of isolation. Even in her childhood, she'd been alone, abandoned, betrayed, and forced to survive by her own rules. To her, the cell was just another kind of street corner, another place where she had to rely on instinct. But outside that cell, the world was watching. News cameras circled the prison. Reporters shouted into microphones, replaying her whispered line, "You'll never understand why I did it." The country debated her motives once again. Was she a woman pushed beyond her limits? Or was she simply born dangerous? As the coverage exploded, other stories of terrifying women prisoners began to surface. The media, hungry for comparisons, turned the spotlight onto inmates like Griselda Blanco, the ruthless cocaine godmother. Blanco had already reaved her name into Miami's history through a reign of violence that left entire neighborhoods drenched in fear. She ordered hits casually, even against her own family members. When she was finally arrested, the courtroom heard stories so brutal, they sounded like scenes from a war zone. In prison, Blanco held a reputation like a queen of darkness. Even behind bars, whispers claimed she pulled strings through smuggled messages and coded orders. Guards knew better than to underestimate her. She may have been shorter and older than most inmates, but her presence alone carried weight. If Aileen Wuornos represented uncontrolled rage, Blanco represented cold, calculated power. The thought of these two women, Wuornos and Blanco, existing within the same prison system sent chills down the spines of investigators. They embodied two extremes of female violence, one spontaneous, explosive, and personal, the other deliberate, organized, and ruthless. Together, they reminded the public that danger didn't always come from where you expected. Back in solitary, Aileen finally broke her silence. She spoke to one of the prison chaplains, her voice low but intense. "People think I'm just a monster," she said. "But they don't know what it's like to live every day waiting for someone to hurt you. They don't know what it's like to never feel safe. I did what I had to do." The chaplain scribbled down notes, torn between sympathy and horror. Was this a confession of guilt or a justification? Aileen's words blurred the line between victim and predator, making it harder to separate who she was from what she had done. Meanwhile, the prison administration faced a problem they couldn't ignore. If Aileen couldn't be trusted around others, how long could they keep her alive inside such tight walls? Some guards argued for maximum isolation. Others whispered that her very presence was poisoning the facility, inciting unrest among the inmates. And then it happened. Another twist no one saw coming. One stormy night, during the routine count, a guard found a message scratched into the concrete wall of Aileen's solitary cell. The words were crude but clear. "More will die. You'll see." The prison went into panic. Was it a threat? A promise? Or a desperate cry from someone losing her grip on reality? Guards searched her cell from corner to corner, but found nothing except her quiet, unblinking stare. Aileen refused to explain. She only smiled, a thin, unsettling grin that sent shivers down their spines. The discovery ignited new fear, not just inside the prison but across the country. The news stations exploded with theories. Was Aileen planning something? Did she have help? Could other inmates be part of a bigger plan? Every possibility felt terrifying. Inside the prison, tension reached a breaking point. Guards doubled their shifts. Inmates whispered in the dark, trading rumors like currency. Some swore they heard footsteps near their cells at night. Others claimed they saw shadows moving where no one should be. The entire block pulsed with paranoia, as if Aileen's words had infected everyone. And through it all, she sat in her cell, silent, waiting. The story of Aileen Wuornos was already infamous, but now it was transforming into something more. She wasn't just a killer who had been caught. She was a living nightmare inside the prison walls. Every day with her locked inside felt like a countdown towards something bigger, something no one could predict. One evening, as a guard slid her food tray under the door, Aileen leaned forward and whispered just loud enough to be heard, "It's not over." The words hung in the air, heavy and menacing. The guard froze, his hand trembling on the tray. He wanted to ask what she meant, but fear glued his lips shut. He backed away slowly, locking the door with shaking fingers. Outside her cell, the storm raged louder in hammerly against the prison windows. Lightning lit up the block, and for a split second, the guards swore they saw something in her eyes. A flicker of triumph, as if she already knew what was coming next. The night dragged on, long and restless. The prison buzzed with tension, and then, just before dawn, alarms wailed through the facility. Lights flashed, doors slammed, and guards shouted orders. Somewhere inside those walls, chaos had erupted again. But this time, no one knew if Aileen Wuornos was at the center of it, or if someone else had picked up where she left off.